Welcome to Dadograms. Would you gut a building down to the studs and then try and rent it out? No? Then why does our government keep doing exactly the same thing with our military? Stick with me. I'm going to explain this whole thing using real estate as an example. And by the end, you'll understand something that has some very powerful people completely confused. As you know, I'm a retired Navy commander, and now I'm a real estate investor. So I'm going to use both to describe one thing in particular. Let's say you find a property that you want to invest in, and it's a mess. Deferred maintenance, bad tenants, holes punched in the drywall, leaks staining the ceilings, structural problems all the way down to the foundation. But the bones are good, and you know that if somebody goes in there and does the hard work, this thing could be worth something someday. So you pull the trigger, and you buy it. So you can fix it up, rent it, and cash flow it. Then you bring in the demo crew. They got it right down to the studs. Insulation, gone. Wiring, pulled out. Subfloor, exposed. The place looks like a war zone, which is fitting because that's exactly the analogy I'm about to use. Now here's my question. At the moment when this place looks like absolute hell, the moment when the walls are open, there's no HVAC, no plumbing, no kitchen, do you call a property manager and tell them to start advertising units for rent? Of course not. That's absurd. You'd be handing someone a shell and calling it an apartment. But here's the thing. That's almost exactly what our national government has done repeatedly when we've chosen to use the military forces overseas. We send the demo crew, which is our military, and they do what the demo crew does exceptionally well. They destroy everything, and then they hand the keys to someone and walk away like the job is done. It isn't done. Not even close. Now here's the part that gets interesting, because the problem isn't the demo crew. They did their job. The problem is something we've been getting wrong on the highest levels of government for decades, and I'm going to show you exactly what that is here. Now, I'm not here to bash the military. Remember, I spent 28 years in uniform, and the men and women we send downrange are the most professional, capable fighting force the world has ever seen. When America decides to use military force, the military's part of the job gets done. That's not the problem. The problem is what we think the military's job actually is. The military is the demo crew. That's it. They are extremely good at that specific role. They go in, they remove what needs to be removed, they clear the site, but a demo crew is not a general contractor. They're not the electrician, the plumber, the property manager, or a leasing agent. And no one would ever expect them to be. In real estate, you understand intuitively that those are different jobs requiring different people, different timelines, and different plans. In national strategy, we seem to forget that completely. There's an acronym used in national security circles, DIME-FIL. It stands for diplomacy, information, military, economic, financial, intelligence, and law enforcement. These are the levers of national power. These are the tools a nation has available to actually shape outcomes all around the world. I've done several videos breaking out each of these in detail, so if you want to go deep on any of them, I'll link them below in the show notes. But for today, here's what I need you to understand. The military is one letter in a 7-letter acronym. One letter. And yet, in almost every major conflict since World War II, we led with that one letter, leaned on it exclusively, and declared victory when the shooting stopped, and then acted surprised when the situation unraveled 5 or 10 years later. That's not a strategy for a profitable rehab. That's a demolition project with no construction plan. So what does it actually look like when we get it right? History gives us the answer, and the results will surprise you. Let me give you the contrast. World War II. The fighting ends in 1945. What did we do? We didn't just pack up and come home. We stayed. We rebuilt. We ran occupation governments in Germany and Japan. We launched the Marshall Plan and pumped what would be roughly $150 billion in today's dollars into the European reconstruction. We helped write constitutions. We helped rebuild economies. We put property managers in place, and then we gave it decades to stabilize before we expected a return. Germany and Japan today are two of the most stable democracies and strongest economies on earth. Those buildings are cash flowing 80 years later. That's what a full rehab looks like when you're willing to see it all the way through. Desert Storm is another reasonable example. The end state there was defined and limited. Get Iraq out of Kuwait, full stop. The coalition went in, accomplished that specific objective, and stopped. It was a targeted demo on one floor of the building. The scope matched the plan. Now compare that to what happened in the years that followed. Afghanistan, 2001. The demo crew went in to take down the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. But then the objectives, they got broader and fuzzier. The years stacked up, and the construction plan never materialized, and it all fell apart when we left. You guys certainly remember Kabul in 2021. Then in 2003, we opened a second job site, Operation Iraqi Freedom. We gutted that building too, with no clear vision of what the finished product was supposed to look like. Then, after years of failed reconstruction and property management, Iraq fractured and caught fire, and we had to go back in when ISIS filled the vacuum in 2014. 2 gut jobs, and we walked away from both, and they both failed. Again, you can't gut buildings and try to rent them out. You'll see nothing but squatters in there treating the place like, garbage, because that's what it is. These were 2 of the most expensive military operations in American history. Same mistake twice in the same decade. Now ask yourself, why do we keep doing this? The answer is uncomfortable, but it's important for you to know. So why does this keep happening? Well, part of it is that Americans reasonably don't want long wars. Nobody does. We just don't seem to have the stomach for it. The demo phase is visible, dramatic, relatively fast. But that rebuild phase, it's slow, expensive, unglamorous, and politically dangerous. Property managers don't make the highlight reels. Diplomats and economic development teams don't get ticker tape parades. So there's an enormous political temptation to declare the mission accomplished when the guns go quiet, even when everyone in the room knows that the hard work hasn't even started yet. Part of it is that we haven't been honest with ourselves or with the American people about what it actually costs to achieve a genuine strategic end state. Not just in dollars, not just in lives during the conflict, but in the sustained commitment required afterward. If you're going to fundamentally change the trajectory of a nation, you're talking about a 10 to 20 year project minimum. You have to be willing to say that out loud before you pull the trigger, not after. And part of it, frankly, is that we haven't demanded that our leaders define the end state before they pull the trigger and commit forces. They need to actually know up front, what does the finished building look like? Who manages it? What's the cash flow? What's the exit strategy? And what are the conditions that have to be in place before you execute it? These aren't just military questions. They're the same questions any competent real estate investor should ask before they sign the purchase agreement. If you can't answer those questions, you're not ready to buy the building, and you're sure as heck not ready to gut it. This isn't just a history lesson. Right now, today, there are conversations being held in Washington that make everything I just said urgent in a way that it hasn't been in years. There's situations in the world right now where this conversation is urgently relevant. There are nations with governments that are genuinely destabilizing the regions around them, funding proxy forces, developing weapons programs that represent real threats, and some of them have been the subject of military discussion for years. I'm not going to name names because I want to stay focused on the concepts rather than the current news cycle. And I want this to be just as useful in 5 years from now as it is today. But I will say this. If you're thinking about gutting that building, you had better have the full construction team ready before the demo crew loads up. You need the diplomats, the economists, the intelligence community, the law enforcement framework, the information operations, and coalitions of allies who are willing to help. All of it lined up and ready to go behind the military, because the demo crew finishing their job is not the end of the project. It's pretty much the beginning. The worst possible outcome is military success followed by strategic failure, and it seems to be the movie that we've watched play out over and over and over again. Now here's where I'll end this. In real estate, we understand that the value isn't created in the demolition. The value is created in the vision of what the building becomes, the plans you build around that vision, and the sustained execution that makes it real. The demo crew is necessary, but they're not sufficient. They never were. The same logic applies to national strategy. Military force is a tool. It can create conditions for something better, but it cannot, by itself, build something better. That requires the other 6 letters of the acronym: a defined end state, political will to see it through, and enough honesty to tell the American people up front what they're actually signing up for. We can do this right. We've done it before. The question is whether we're willing to do it right from here on out. I'm Jason Garrett, and this has been your Dadogram. If this has made you think, share it with someone else who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper on DIME-FIL and how each of these tools actually works, check out this video along with all the weekend reminders about it. I'll link those videos in the description. Until next time, take care of yourselves.